Hello and welcome to the EDU-TALK series hosted by Biotone Edu Partner School Program, and massage industry experts. With the growing interest and popularity of the EDU-TALK series, Biotone continues to support virtual learning and building massage community by connecting you with industry experts who share their knowledge and expertise, not only for class discussion, but career success. Today's expert is Nikki Kenward, a UK Upledger CranioSacral therapist with over 20 years experience, who's specialized in gut health, pediatrics, trauma, and PTSD. She's an international educator with 15 years experience as a certified international healthcare educator. Additionally, Nikki is an author and reviewed her book, Overcoming Chronic Digestive Conditions, for the EDU-TALK series, author series, which can be found on biotone.com under the EDU-TALK tab. Let's listen and learn as Nikki discusses gut feelings, exploring the emotional second brain. We all have gut feelings, stomach butterflies, and have experienced the misery of gut dysfunction. Let's listen and learn as Nikki explores gut reactions and the way life experiences are embedded in the different layers of cells of our gut, and in particular, our enteric nervous system or second brain. Looking forward to this, Nikki. Thank you everyone again for joining us. Please have your sound muted, video off, and feel free to chat questions or comments, which Nikki will answer at the end of her presentation. And with that, Nikki, I welcome again. Thank you for this presentation. We have a lot to cover, so I will see you on the other side.
Thank you so much, Donald, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here on the Biotone series. Thank you, Biotone, for creating this EDU-TALK platform, and welcome everybody to tonight. So without further ado, I'm going to start sharing with you some of my thoughts on our emotional guts. I'm going to share my screen. So here we are, exploring our emotional second brain. And this, of course, is the enteric nervous system, the nervous system that is found only in the gut. It's obviously connected to the rest of our nervous system, but it's often called the second brain now because it can think for itself as well. So, and Donald introduced beautifully there, this image, we've all felt this, you know, before an assessment, something difficult we have to say, or I felt these tonight before coming on to talk to you all. We have that butterfly feeling. That's so familiar, but all our emotions are felt in the gut, and I'm going to share with you how our gut responds to our life moment by moment. And it's very interesting as well to notice the huge paradox between how the eastern part of the world and the western part of the world look at the gut. So in the West, often our gut is seen as a long tube from the mouth down to the anus, through which food goes in one end and comes out as bowel movements, as stool the other end. And that's pretty much it. It's something you don't really talk about much in polite company. And certainly you wouldn't talk about bowel movements and mental health in the same sentence if you didn't want there to be an awkward silence. So that's our Western look very often. And yet in the East, the gut, and especially the lower part of the abdomen, is often seen as our center of emotional and spiritual growth. And so people who are meditating, who are following maybe some Taoist or Buddhist meditation practices, will often be instructed by their teacher to focus on the lower dantian, the lower part of the abdomen. So what a paradox. How can we bridge these two things? This is what I hope to share. So my focus for the last 7 years has really been about bridging this gap, researching and exploring in my clinical practice what happens when people come in with chronic digestive conditions that don't seem to be impacted by the food they eat or the medication they take. So is making a connection into the more Eastern belief something which will help us find the missing piece in the puzzle of these chronic digestive problems like irritable bowel system, diverticulitis, constipation, chronic constipation, Crohn's, etc., etc., all of which are really, really uncomfortable to experience. So this is me over the last 7 years trying to find that missing piece. All the people coming into my clinic who've tried so many things over the years, and indeed myself with my own journey in the gut. However, it doesn't really matter how many wonderful pieces of food we eat. Avocados are not always the answer. If we cannot or do not address the emotional history in our gut, our progress will always be limited. Our emotional and spiritual growth is then lost because, as I see it, these chronic conditions are a way into the deeper hidden stories that give us an opportunity for growth. And I'm not saying, incidentally, that we don't need to look at nutritional health. Of course we do. But if we don't address this fundamental underlying history in our gut, the deep stories in our gut, then it won't be enough on its own. So what did I do? What did I learn? Well, eventually I developed the Upledger curriculum to expand our light touch bodywork so that we could work with the enteric nervous system, the nervous system found in the gut, and the gastrointestinal tract, and all the cells and tissues and layers found there. To go along with that, I wrote my book, Overcoming Chronic Digestive Conditions, Releasing the Visceral Layers of Post-Traumatic Gut Disorder. This naturally came out of developing the curriculum and all my research because I really wanted to share what I had learned, my insights and my thoughts more widely than the people that came to my classes, in order for people to have a broader view of what might be happening with their chronic digestive problems. So we're going to do, you, me, everybody there, we're going to do a little mini experiment. So I'd all like you, just wherever you're sitting, just pop your hands on the lower part of the abdomen, as you can see in the picture. And I'm just going to do a very, very short mini visualization for you. So I'd like you just to close your eyes for a moment, if you're comfortable with that, and go inside. And just soften your hands and breathe. Allow your ribs to expand, allow your belly to expand with the breath. And just notice how the belly feels under your hands. Maybe you're not aware of anything. Maybe you feel some movement. Maybe you feel some numbness in some places. Maybe you feel some tension. I don't know. And maybe if you move your hands around that area, different places feel different. So just notice what it's like when you use your hands like big ears almost on the gut. And for the first time, maybe for a while, you go inside to connect with that. So make a mental note now of what that feels like. And we're going to come back to that in a few minutes. So I wonder, how was it to connect with that part of you? Just notice in your mind, make a note of what that was like. What did you feel or learn by doing that? And did anything change as you spent that short time with your hands on the gut, or did it just stay the same? Maybe when you put your hands on, there was kind of nothing or a little bit numb, and then maybe by the end you were feeling something else, other sensations. So just note that. So now we're just going to take a short glimpse into the incredible universe that we can find inside our gut. So what I want you to do as I show you the next few slides is not try to remember all the anatomy or all the names or details. That's not what this presentation is about. I hope to inspire in you some awe and wonder at this complex system we have in our gut. This system which receives all our experiences moment by moment and responds to them. This place where we have this incredible enteric nervous system that's talking all the time to the endocrine system there, the hormones, to the gut bacteria there, to all the different cell populations, so many things going on, so many busy conversations. It really is constantly a team effort to be able to respond to our life, to our food, and to enable our whole body to function well. So let me just give you a glimpse. Now, this slide is, if you imagine that's a quarter of a whole circle, and what you're looking at is a cross-section of all the layers of the small intestine. And it's very similar to all the layers of the bowel or large intestine. So, as I said, you don't need to try and remember all the names of these things. However, look at the layers, how complex they are. This is not just a tube. So going from the outside, which is that beautiful violet colored layer, we have the mesentery, which is a layer of fascia, which brings the arterial blood and nerve supply to the other layers and supports and envelops the tube. Then we have a layer of muscle, longitudinal muscle, which runs along the tube, part of the way we can squeeze the food and the bowel, the stool out of the tube. Then we have the myenteric plexus, which is a big part of the enteric nervous system. And that is sandwiched between the longitudinal muscle and the circular muscle, which you can see underneath it. Running the other way, the circular muscle goes around the tube. So all this, the motor complex, which the myenteric plexus is, and the two muscular layers squeeze in a kind of rhythmical segment by segment action to allow everything to pass through the tube. Then coming a little bit nearer to the center, we have the submucosa, which is a dense layer, and embedded in that is another very sensory part of the enteric nervous system called the submucosal plexus. So that's another big part of the nervous system. And it's also connected to the myenteric plexus. So it's all working together, all those layers. Then you have another layer of muscle to support the last few layers, muscularis mucosa. Below that, you can see the lamina propria, which is a big part of our lymph, our immune system, remembering 70% of our immune system is in the gut, with lots and lots of immune cells, pairs, patches, and so on inside it. And so this is a very, very important part, ready to jump into action if anything difficult happens and we need protection. Below that, we have the basement membrane, which is a layer of fascia and connective tissue. And then finally, we have, supported by the basement membrane, the epithelial layer. This is this delicate layer, delicate barrier, one single cell barrier, on which we have all the villi as well, where we absorb the food that come into our body. And then in the middle, you'll see there's a space with the word lumen, and lumen is the hole in the middle of the tube. Interesting, because lumen means light, and I almost think of it like a light pipe coming through the body. So look at those layers and how they're all going to interact. They all need to function well if we're going to be healthy. And they can all hold their own strain patterns, tension patterns. This can impact the nervous system, the fascial layers, and you can just imagine how complex some of these digestive issues might be. And here's just another little look at those layers, just so you can appreciate the tube from a different angle. So you can see we have the mesentery bringing the nerves and arteries. We have the muscular layers, the nerve plexus coming in with the lymphatic tissue, the basement membrane, the epithelial layer, and the lumen going through the middle. So you can imagine that if one of those layers has a strong tension pattern, maybe from stress, emotional challenge, surgery even, infection, disease, whatever it might be, the impact that that could have on all the layers going through and how complex a system we have. And here, of course, is a beautiful picture of our gut bacteria, and they are found in the small and large intestine. They are involved in the creation of our serotonin. They're involved in the decisions the enteric nervous system makes. So there isn't really a single decision made in the gut that the gut bacteria do not have a part to play in. And we all know that what we want is what we see here, which is a beautiful rainforest. And we don't want a barren wasteland. That's where we need to do our emotional work, and we need to eat good, clean food and as many different kinds of foods as possible. So the impact on the gut, as we have just said, I'm going to mention very briefly the ACE study. Some of you may have come across this, the Adverse Childhood Experience study. The one big thing that came out of that was that our early years experience has the biggest impact on our lifelong physical and mental health above anything else. And what they have shown is it has a negative impact right from those first few years on the makeup of our gut bacteria, our microbiota. So right from the beginning, we see that stress, trauma creates unhelpful settings in the enteric nervous system. Often I find with the gut, if somebody gets overwhelmed, the gut can go into a freeze response. The person can become quite disconnected and disassociated. The strain patterns in the layers can happen just as in the fascia and tissues elsewhere in the body. And imagine the impact on cell populations like the serotonin and the enterochromaffin cells. And the enterochromaffin cells in those gut layers manufacture 95% of the serotonin in the body. So now we're going to do another very mini visualization and experiment. So just allowing all that information I've given you about the layers and that incredible busy system, pop your hands back on the lower part of your abdomen. Take a lovely deep breath and let go of all those words. And just know that your hands are now more informed. Maybe your perception has shifted a little bit with some of that information. Breathe down into the belly, into your hands. Allow your hands to listen to all those incredible, beautiful layers that we've talked about that respond moment by moment to our thoughts, our feelings, our history, the hidden stories there. And I wonder how it feels this time. I wonder whether you notice more or less. So I'm just going to give you another couple of moments there to see how that connection is now and how it feels and what you might perceive. And make a mental note and compare it to how it was before. Because our bodies love being listened to, and our bodies know the information that we have in our hands. And your body, as you connect in there to the gut with your breath and your hands, will know what you now know. Okay, so making a mental note of that, just take another deep breath as you come out of that. And you might want even to write down or make a note, how was it with these more informed hands? And imagine then how this might impact your clients. And this is what I found in my practice. As I learnt more, researched more, practiced on myself, on people that came to me, it was as if when I put my hands on that person's abdomen, they knew in that, deep in that system, they knew that my hands had that knowledge, had that information. And that helped me to listen to the strain patterns in the layers, to dialogue with cell populations, and everything just started to engage with me. So imagine all those clients that you see, or yourself, for example, who have these ongoing digestive issues, how this work might help them and help you help them as you understand more of what's needed. And I would just love to know how it was for you tonight. I think you'll get my email. Always happy to hear from people as they experiment with this work. So when you take this into clinical practice, what is it going to be useful for? Well, so many things. I am a pediatric therapist as well. And so, as I'm sure many of you listening and watching know, that sensory integration dysfunction, anxiety, children or any age on the autistic spectrum tend to have issues with the gut. So this is really, really helpful work to be able to get your hands on there and down-regulate that enteric nervous system, tune into any difficulties in the fascial patterns there. It's obviously helpful for trauma, the deeply hidden stories, the times when we often go through to fight and flight or even further to freeze, which is what I often find with the gut. It's really helpful to be able to have this information and to be able to get your hands on and help those stories to be expressed and resolved. And then, of course, what we find is people can receive food more easily and the gut will work much better on that level too. It's really useful work for post-abdominal surgery or even investigations like colonoscopies. They're useful, but they're quite invasive. So it's really useful afterwards to be able to know where those strain patterns are as a result of these things, working with adhesions, with scar tissue. And of course, with these chronic conditions, IBS, the ubiquitous IBS, and that, of course, is nearly always related to trauma in early life. We know that now Crohn's, often related to some stress, diverticulitis, chronic constipation. And I've worked with people with diverticulitis who have very, very stressful jobs. I see them for a session, all the symptoms go away for a couple of weeks. They come back because they're still in the stressful job. And so, yeah, in the end, this particular person I'm thinking of did change their work. And now I don't have to see them at all because everything is much better. So, yeah, there's going to be an element of stress in its wider sense in all of these things. So one thing is really, really important if you're going to start doing some work on the gut, putting your hands on, because it's so involved with some of our deepest hidden stories, so involved with trauma, so involved with when we've had to dissociate or go into freeze completely. You need to create safety. And then after that, you need to create a lot of safety and then more safety. And I've said it 3 times because I know as therapists, we need to make this safe space always. But if you're working on the gut, in my experience, it needs to be even more fundamental and deeply held in that space. And of course, the best way we do this is to make sure we're really grounded in our own bodies and neutral, get our own work done on our own gut, so that when you put your hands on that person, they will then, on some level, know that you've been on a journey with yours. And that will help, again, to create this safety. I find that I need to have my hands very, very light. Really focus on my breathing, my grounding, my neutral energy, and be patient and just allow whatever needs to happen to happen. But I want to leave you with a message of great hope. So what we've discovered is that this enteric nervous system, or second brain as it's often called, because it can make its own decisions as well as decisions sent from the brain and the head, is actually neuroplastic. And most of you, I'm sure all of you know that the brain and the head is neuroplastic. It has plasticity. It has potential for change. This is why people who've had strokes and so on can actually, with enough repetition and work, they can enable themselves to use different parts of the brain for tasks that other parts that are not working so well used to do. So even our thoughts, our feelings, all of these things have an impact on the structuring and constant change that's going on in the brain. So the really good news that we know now is that the enteric nervous system, or second brain in the gut, is also neuroplastic. This gives us potential for change. So whatever the issue there is there, we can work with this in order to effect change for the better. So with knowledge and insight, we can begin to reach the stories in us and others that were so hard to reach, those things which I found hard to reach, making that connection between the gut, this long tube, and our emotional and spiritual growth. We can begin to release tensions, facilitate people's comfort and function in the gut, and offer them this opportunity for growth. Whatever the trauma is, I'm a huge believer in post-traumatic growth. And so our final slide, we have here all the things that will help our gut. And you can probably see most of them. So befriending the gut, listening to the gut, connecting in there, dealing with the tension, talking to the cells, balancing everything, releasing the layers, all the different layers, living in a way which minimizes the stress and challenge in our life as far as possible, and great awareness of this wonderful, wonderful system that we have there. And so I leave you with that and encourage you all to really share with me things thoughts you have, questions or explorations that you make. And if you want to learn more than the few things I've said in this presentation, then you're very welcome to have a look on upledger.com. And the foundation class you'd need to do several foundation classes there before you could do my class on the gut, in order to have that basic knowledge that we require for the craniosacral work in the Upledger curriculum. But then you would be able to do the full gut class. Also, just to show you, here is the book, if you can see it there. And that's for the general public as well as for therapists and their clients. It's another way of learning more if you're not ready to do the curriculum at the Institute. You can learn more here.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to stop sharing.
Great. Great. Now that you're more full screen, would you like to hold up the book cover again, Nikki?
Oh, yeah.
And what I'd like to mention is Nikki did do an EDU-TALK Author Series book review, which can be found again on biotone.com under the EDU-TALK tab. And thank you, Nikki. This also can be found through Upledger Institute. And that email address or that website and contact information will be in tomorrow's follow-up email with the recording link, Nikki's contact information, Upledger contact information, and a copy of the PowerPoint presentation. And I saw something come in. First, Nikki, there was a lot of people that felt it was very informative. The second time they did the meditative hands on the lower abdomen. And someone found it easier when laying down as opposed to sitting.
Yeah, of course.
And the ACE study, someone said it's an amazing study. We can all find out our own ratings doing the test. And
absolutely.
You would just Google ACE.
Yes, you just Google ACE, ACE or Adverse Childhood Experience, and it will come up. And there are two wonderful books from that, Childhood Disrupted and The Deepest Well, which I recommend people to read.
All right. And I will include that in the follow-up email tomorrow.
Okay, cool.
Let's see, we have Patrice. I remember doing this one time with a client before as her body was trembling and shaking. It was, let's see, it was more of an intuitive move and maybe something I've read somewhere before, but I placed hand on her stomach, then guided her to take deep breaths, and literally her tremble stopped.
Wow, wonderful.
Yeah, so let me ask a question there. I wasn't sure if you would take your client's hands and lay the client hands on the abdomen and guide them,
no,
or if the
not
therapist
normally. So for this exercise, I was just interested to see how people felt about themselves and how connected they could be. But when somebody comes into my practice, I put my hands on and I adapt and use my other cranial techniques and the ones I've developed especially for the gut, and I do those. But, you know, if somebody was very nervous about this work, some people, maybe they've been through a lot of challenge, then there's no reason why you can't put their hands on their belly and put your hands on their hands, for example. So I wouldn't rule that out, but generally I find I can put my hands on.
All right, and we have Is there a specific approach for working on abdominal scar tissue after surgery that we could use now?
Well, I think I'd love to say yes. I think if you really wanted to be accurate with that, you'd benefit from doing my class, so you'd be able to be more targeted and accurate. However, there's absolutely no reason now, having this information, you can't put your hands on and just listen and intuitively be guided to the right place. And then I would just follow any of the tiny movements there in the body, and you will probably get some release.
Now, I have a question regarding an intake form. Are these questions like IBS or Crohn's disease or chronic constipation, are those items that are included on most intake forms when you're meeting with a new client? How does this come up in discussion so that you would know?
Sure. Yeah, good question. So I do always ask people about their digestive system in great detail. So I'll say, tell me about your digestive system. And if they're not forthcoming, I'll say, do you have regular bowel movements? Do you have any pain? Do you have any, da 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 da? And then people will start talking and telling me about it. And sometimes a lot of people come to me for gut work now, which will come as no surprise to anybody. But sometimes if somebody's coming for general craniosacral work and I end up working on the gut, they'll say, oh, I didn't know you worked on the gut. And so I try and explain that it's an extension of our curriculum. And I actually, on upledger.com, I've actually made a poster which is really useful to show to clients and have up in your office or back of the bathroom door even, which really shows them what this wonderful system is like and how it works. And that's also on upledger.com.
And that's a poster of
Yeah,
the
it
digestive
just helps.
system?
Yes, and it's a poster on my work on that system, but I only mention that because it helps people to understand when they come into your office what you might be doing.
All right, we still have another few minutes for questions or comments for Nikki. And again, I'd like to mention tomorrow you'll receive a follow-up email with a recording link and the contact information and a copy of Nikki's handout as well. And I think, Nikki, you're going to have to remind me about the books you mentioned. I thought I could
Yes,
remember them for 5 minutes.
I will. Yes. Do you want me
Or
to
maybe just
email
enter
them
them
to
in
you?
chat and enter them in the chat.
Okay.
And then everyone can see it, and I can include that again tomorrow in the follow-up. Yeah, I think it's interesting when someone just comes to a therapist for a first visit, to include the digestive system in getting to know who your client is.
Well, and also, actually, I always tell people about the ACE study. So another question I have, because of this work, so I realized how important it was and the impact on the gut bacteria and everything else, is I have a question about their childhood experience. So right from the beginning, I say, and when you look back on your early years, can you say you always felt safe, valued, and loved, or not? And I say you don't have to share anything you don't want to, because I don't want them to think I'm going right in. But and I say I ask everybody this question because it's so important. I mentioned a study, and people are very happy to answer it, and they'll either say yes, I did, and that's great, or they might say no, and and that already gives them an awareness of the connection with the work that we're going to do, as well as giving me a heads up. But I just think it's important, so I put it on my form, and nobody minds.
Okay.
Mm.
And Patrice is saying, thank you so much. I've read The Deepest Well and learned so much about my own trauma. It's a great book. And how do you handle if someone has an emotional release?
Right, another great question. So if you do the Upledger curriculum, you will come to the somato-emotional release classes 1 and 2, and they teach you what to do when emotional stuff comes up. So we learn dialoguing and visualization techniques. It's all grounded hands-on on the body, but we learn how to support that process. If you're not grounded in that work, maybe as that other lady said, you know, put hands on and there was shaking, just maybe ground yourself, keep your hands on, keep making that person feel safe, and just be with them. You don't really, I think we need to be less clever than we think.
And supportive.
Yeah,
Now
it's
the
having
chat,
somebody who doesn't run away from the pain, really.
that just came in,
Mhm.
I do not know how to pronounce this.
No, me
Okay,
neither. I've got the chat and I can't either.
so you're not familiar with that?
No, and Edgardo, I'd love to know more about that. I don't know anything about that. I mean, all I know is, because I am a yoga teacher and therapist, is how different the two thoughts are about the gut. Oh, that sounds really interesting. I'd probably love to have one of those and to see what it was like.
Yes, yes. Well,
Thank
I'll
you.
see if I can learn more about that. Maybe we can have an EDU-TALK on
Yeah,
it. That would be
yeah, that
wonderful.
sounds fascinating. Thank you for mentioning that.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. Well, I think that's it, unless there's any final questions. And what I'd like to do is thank you all for being here today, and please join us for upcoming EDU-TALKs. April 9th, next Tuesday. If you're not familiar with the EDU-TALK Diabetes Series, it's newly launched in May 2023 and addresses topics for your special need clients with diabetes. We'll have Linda Lockett-Brown, a dietitian, presenting on the topic of good fat, bad fat, knowledge for diabetes health and awareness. And then on April 16th, we'll have Whitney Lowe presenting applied biomechanics for effective treatment strategies. So please watch your inbox for the follow-up email with all the good content information. Within the next week, you'll receive an email from Upledger Institute with offers on classes, so you can learn more there and about their core classes, their fundamental classes. And you'll also keep an eye out for invitations to upcoming EDU-TALKs. Now, there was a chat question about scar tissue, and I don't have the particular date right in front of me, but those who might know Pete Whitridge, he will be presenting on, and I don't have the exact title, but it's on surgeries, scars, and burns. I'll include that in tomorrow's email follow-up, so you can mark that on your calendar, and he'll be reviewing that for us. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Nikki, for a very engaging, let's see, I just want to see if there were any last chats. Engaging EDU-TALK. I really appreciate it, as I appreciated you doing the EDU-TALK Author Series as well. Thank you, everyone. Please join us again and be safe. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.